I stand before you with humility in my heart to make a humble request of a listening ear. I've never struggled so much to find words to offer a kahal before. To get us started, I've borrowed some words from Anne Lamott, one of my favorite faith writers. In her book, Almost Everything, Notes on Hope, she states, "Joy is always a surprise and often a decision." Part of the difficulty in delivering this message is it is one I so desperately need to hear, but have become hardwired to resist. We gather together tonight to celebrate the sweetness of a new year, but we are in the midst of a very difficult few weeks, let alone year. One of the reasons I love Anne Lamott's writing is because she has the tremendous ability and courage to unabashedly and humorously speak the truth. As a self-described writer, recovering alcoholic, and Sunday school teacher, Lamott often writes about the paradox of life, what she calls a divine puzzle that we keep on trying to solve until one day we or our progeny may find a solution. I find an apt description of this paradox in the preface of her book. She says, "I am stockpiling antibiotics for the apocalypse. Everything is exploding, everything is burning, being shot or crashing to the ground all around us. Yet, growing older has provided me with a measure of perspective and equilibrium. Towns and cities, ice fields, democracy, people, all disappear. Yet, we rejoice and thrive in the spring and the sweetness of old friendships. There is so much going on that flattens us, that is huge, scary, or simply appalling. We're doomed, stunned, exhausted, over-caffeinated. And yet, outside my window, yellow roses bloom, little kids horse around, making a joyous racket." Who here has not felt the emotional tumult of holding conflicting truths of pain and beauty, suffering and joy as we approach the world? I, for one, feel it whenever I interact with my most wonderful and at times terrifying nephew, a toddler. For both the briefest and prolonged moments, he provides me with a temporary amnesia of the world, a world that I am often afraid to face. I find babies, or newish humans, whatever they like to be called, so fascinating. Asher, I'm looking at you. Namely because they have an unabashed commitment to expressing their feelings. There is no hiding from emotion or hiding emotion from others. When my nephew feels joy, we know it. And when he does not feel joy, we know it. So, when I read Anne Lamott's line, "Joy is always a surprise, but most often a decision," I wonder, when did joy become a decision for me? For us? I wouldn't call myself a pessimist, but I do think that an honest evaluation of my ability to empathize with others rests in my ability to witness their suffering, maybe more easily than their joy. Perhaps this is because in my own moments of suffering, I have found God more easily. Maybe this also comes from feeling affirmed and being seen during personal moments of pain, as though I was less alone. I believe that part of my call to be a rabbi is to ensure that no one ever feels this singular type of loneliness. But that is a heavy responsibility to hold, and one that simply has become unsustainable during this past year, in the midst of a relentless string of tragedies. Brené Brown, the widely acclaimed author, speaks about a phenomenon called comparative suffering. Comparative suffering, she says, stems from the idea that empathy is finite. It is an emotional exercise that humans enter when we are triggered by a sense of fear or scarcity. It makes us say to ourselves, who am I to feel badly because I am hurting right now? There are sick people dying around the world. There are people who lost everything in this earthquake, in this storm. Fill in the blank. Who am I to feel this way when I have so much to be grateful for? Who here has said this to themselves before? Thank you for those hands and head nods. I'm a master at it, a master. There's a pitfall, however, with this train of thought. In some ways, it helps us bring valuable perspective to privileges we carry in life, those given to us by the sacrifices of our parents and their parents, and those simply given to us by God. But when we deny empathy to ourselves, we lose the ability to empathize at all. As a result, we end up feeling ashamed for not feeling the pain and suffering or experiencing the pain and suffering of others, even guilty for feeling the opposite of that suffering, for feeling joy. So like many who have accumulated new habits this past year, I also accumulated a new habit. Some people, their new habits were wearing sweatpants for Zoom meetings, some wearing no pants for Zoom meetings. I adopted the habit of saying no to joy. I like to believe that I did this pure-heartedly. I came to believe that in some way, if I actively denied myself moments of joy, I would help bear the burden of global suffering. At first, I admit, it did make me feel a little better, worthier, holier. I would think, while you go get your manicure, I will be reading more about oppression in Uganda. I figured if I could only acquaint myself intimately with the suffering of others, I would at least embark on the first step towards knowing how to remedy it. There was no time for joy because I needed to fix the suffering. But that also meant eschewing experiences that would simply make me happy. What happens, though, when we actively deny joy, like flexing any muscle over and over again, the more we do it, the easier it becomes, so that one day the activity actually becomes rote and completely thoughtless. Before I knew it, my ability to even decipher opportunities to experience joy had all but disappeared. I became too good at feeling pain. I forgot how to hold Lamott's divine paradigm